Hello and welcome to a special Electronic Intifada newscast for Friday, August 29th. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Nora Barrows-Friedman with my colleague Tamara Nassar. It's day 693 of Israel's genocide in Gaza. Here's a brief summary of some of the latest developments this week in Palestine. Israel has killed at least 475 Palestinians and injured nearly 2,200 between August 20th and August 27th, according to official records from the Ministry of Health in Gaza. The Israeli army has continued to destroy entire city blocks in Gaza City and other areas in northern Gaza, in relentless bombing and demolition operations across the south, east, and north of the city, advancing from three axes toward the city's center in a campaign of comprehensive destruction and systematic erasure, according to Euromed Human Rights Monitor. This escalation marks a new phase of the genocide against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, ongoing for 23 months, Euromed says. Quote, this assault follows the Israeli army's official announcement of Operation Gideon's Chariots II on August 20th, with its preliminary and initial stages already underway. Over 1 million people are now trapped in less than 30% of Gaza City, all facing the threat of forced displacement to the south, under a plan designed to erase the city, inflict systematic destruction, and establish full military control. Israel has been using bomb-carrying drones as well as remote-controlled armored vehicles packed with tons of explosives to obliterate residential buildings and homes. Footage of a lethal quadcopter drone was recorded by civil defense worker Mahmoud Salem, east of the Sheikh Radwan neighborhood in Gaza City. Euromed added that, quote, the continued excessive intensity of Israeli attacks combined with the limited capacity and accessibility of the few functioning hospitals and the absence of basic civil defense capabilities and field coverage makes accurate documentation of casualties impossible. The actual death toll is almost certainly far higher than what has been announced or recorded to date, they say. These practices are inflicting catastrophic and irreversible consequences on hundreds of thousands of civilians already enduring starvation and displacement. They are subjected to daily bombings and killings as their city is erased block by block before their eyes, while the international community remains inactive and silent in the face of one of the most heinous crimes of genocide in modern history, the rights group adds. Alam Hejazi filmed footage of the complete destruction of Al-Istijaba Mosque in Asabra neighborhood, one of the most crowded areas in southern Gaza City. Attacks this week were carried out on the tents of displaced Palestinian families, including in the Al-Mawasi area in western Gaza. An attack on Tuesday, August 26th, on tent shelters in Al-Mawasi killed a young girl, Juri Lafi. A few days before, on August 23rd, Al-Mawasi tent shelters were also bombed. Journalist Ahmed Al-Najjar reported that 17 displaced Palestinians, including 6 children, were slaughtered by Israel's bombing of makeshift tents at dawn, areas that the Israeli army has previously designated as so-called safe zones, but has routinely bombed and attacked. On Monday, August 25th, at about 10 o'clock in the morning, Israel bombed the Nasser medical complex in a so-called double-tap strike, killing at least 22 people, including rescue workers and 5 journalists. The strikes targeted the 4th floor of the emergency building, first killing Reuters cameraman Hussam al-Masri and at least 1 other civilian, as rescue workers searched for survivors and as journalists documented the aftermath of al-Masri's assassination. Israel targeted the area again, killing and wounding the civil defense workers and 4 other journalists. The attack was captured live on video by journalists filming across the street.
لا حصل الآن خليك يا الله راح الدفاع المدني قتلوا الناس راح الدفاع المدني قتلوا الناس. استهداف كبير الآن كما تشاهدون في هذه الصورة. تدمير كبير، قصف عنيف جدا.
In addition to 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿, Israel assassinated Mohammed Salama, an Al Jazeera photographer and reporter for Middle East Eye, Mariam Abu Daqqa, a journalist working with the Independent Arabic and the Associated Press, Moaz Abu Taha, a freelance journalist, and Ahmed Abu Aziz, a freelancer who also worked with Middle East Eye. Civil defense firefighter Abdullah al-Sha'ir and other civilians were also killed. At least 10 others, including journalists and civil defense workers, were injured. Euromed Human Rights Monitor's field team, quote, reported seeing an Israeli surveillance drone flying at low altitude over Nasser Medical Complex before the attack, providing further evidence that it was deliberate and intelligence-guided, with precise information collected about the site and the victims. The Palestinian civil defense stated after the attack that, quote, this Israeli targeting of our crews was not the first during the ongoing war of extermination. Today marks the 26th time our crews have been targeted in the field of humanitarian work, and the 11th time our crews have been targeted inside their centers and workplaces. By committing this crime, the civil defense added, the occupation forces have rendered the only 2 rescue and ambulance vehicles in Khan Yunis Governorate out of service after they were damaged in this bombing. Only the sole fire engine remains in service. With this bombing, the total number of civil defense martyrs has risen to 139 and 343 wounded since the beginning of the war of extermination that the occupation continues to perpetrate against our people in the Gaza Strip. Israel's Prime Minister and war crimes suspect Benjamin Netanyahu claimed in English on social media that the attack was a, quote, mishap, and that, quote, Israel values the work of journalists, medical staff, and all civilians. But in Hebrew language media, which is not a secret language and can be easily translated into English, Israeli soldiers admitted that the strikes were, quote, approved and coordinated with senior command. Soldiers from the Golani unit of the Israeli army demanded an apology from Netanyahu, saying that his apology was insulting and dangerous to their unit commander. The Israeli army also claimed that it was targeting a camera supposedly belonging to resistance fighters. The Gaza government media office repudiated the claim, saying on August 26th that, quote, this camera was clearly visible. It belonged to Reuters photojournalist 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿, who was killed by the occupation in the first raid while he was broadcasting live to the media. Targeting journalists is strictly prohibited under international humanitarian law and constitutes a documented war crime. The media office said that Israel's attempt to craft this false narrative, quote, is merely an extension of an old approach followed in every crime, fabricating pretexts and evidence to evade international prosecution. Its repeated accusations of military activities against hospitals and civilian infrastructure are intended to legitimize their bombing, a complete violation of all international laws. Furthermore, throughout the genocidal war, it has failed to prove its claims and lies that hospitals or civilian infrastructure are linked to military activities. Middle East Eye reported that U.S. contractors at a Gaza Humanitarian Foundation site had detained and interrogated a source of Mohammed Salama, seeking information about the reporter's identity and whereabouts before he was killed in the Khan Yunis bombing at Nasser Medical Complex. The U.S. mercenaries reportedly asked about a specific story that Middle East Eye says Salama worked on anonymously for security reasons. Colleagues of the murdered journalists condemned the way that the Associated Press and Reuters reported on the attacks that killed them, once again giving Israel's claims the benefit of the doubt while not standing behind their employees. Al Jazeera's Hind Khodari said on Tuesday that, quote, the Reuters news agency did not mention in their headline their cameraman who had been working for them for months. In their article, they simply described him as a Reuters contractor. Another journalist was killed in Khan Yunis just hours after the attack on Nasser Medical Complex, bringing the total number of reporters assassinated by Israel on August 25th to 6. Israeli forces killed Hassan Duhan, a journalist and academic who worked as a correspondent for the publication Al-Hayat Al-Jadida. The Gaza government media office said that he was shot by Israeli forces in Al-Mawasi. And on Saturday, August 23rd, Khalid al-Madhoun, who worked as a photojournalist for Palestine TV, was killed by direct fire while working in northern Gaza. 246 journalists and media workers have now been killed by Israel since October 2023. Mariam Abu Daqqa, the photojournalist who was killed at Nasser Medical Complex, wrote a letter to her son 𝐓𝐡𝐞 to be published on the occasion of her death. Abu Daqqa wrote, quote, 𝐓𝐡𝐞, you are your mother's heart and soul. I want you to pray for me and not cry over me so I can remain happy. I want you to make me proud, to succeed, to excel, to stand strong, and to become a capable businessman, my love. I want you, my dear, never to forget me. I always did everything to make you happy, to keep you joyful and comfortable, and to give you everything. When you grow up, get married, and have a daughter, name her Mariam after me. You are my love, my heart, my support, my soul, and my son, who always makes me proud and brings me joy with his good reputation. I entrust you, 𝐓𝐡𝐞, to your prayers, your prayers, your prayers, my dear, your mother, Mariam. Mohammed Assad, a photojournalist and longtime contributor to the Electronic Intifada, appealed to the world to stop Israel's genocide and serial attacks against journalists.
This is the last call from Gaza City. For all foreign journalists in the world, please come to Gaza and start covering with us. We don't have any protection. 245 Palestinian journalists killed at the moment. Please come to us and compress in your governments in everywhere and come to Gaza. We don't have any protection. We don't have gasoline in our cars. We have expired vests and wear it. Come to us before the occupation invasion Gaza City in the next month. They will destroy everything here. It will be a lot of mass cries in this place.
That was Mohammed Assad, a photojournalist and longtime contributor to the Electronic Intifada this week. And in related news, Valerie Zink, a writer and photographer who worked for Reuters in Canada, announced hours after the attack on Nasser Medical Complex that she was resigning from her position as a stringer from the news agency in protest of its role, as she says, quote, in justifying and enabling the systematic assassination of 245 journalists in Gaza. I owe my colleagues in Palestine at least this much and so much more. Zink writes, quote, Reuters' willingness to perpetuate Israel's propaganda has not spared their own reporters from Israel's genocide. Western media is directly culpable for creating the conditions in which this can happen, she adds. I have valued the work that I brought to Reuters over the past 8 years, but at this point I can't conceive of wearing this press pass with anything but deep shame and grief. I don't know what it means to begin to honor the courage and sacrifice of the journalists in Gaza, the bravest and best to ever live. But going forward, I will direct whatever contributions I have to offer with that front of mind. That was from photographer Valerie Zink. As Israel's mass destruction of Gaza City accelerates, so does its policy of forced expulsion. Al Jazeera's Hind Khodari said that Israeli forces have been intensifying their airstrikes and quadcopter attacks on Jabalia, north of Gaza City, forcing Palestinians to move. This week, Palestinians were forcibly displaced from their homes in the 𝐓𝐡𝐞 neighborhood of northern Gaza City, following repeated threats and attacks by Israeli forces. The United Nations Humanitarian Office warned on Wednesday that there are simply not enough shelter materials for people who are being displaced. Quote, multiple organizations' attempts to bring shelters into the Strip are being rejected by the Israeli authorities, even before the supplies are brought into Israel or the occupied Palestinian territory. Partners stress that many tents and tarpaulins have worn out and must urgently be replaced. In addition, high tides overnight have submerged tents on the beach, affecting at least 200 families. Partners also underscore that tents and other shelter equipment must be allowed into all parts of Gaza, including directly to northern Gaza and Gaza City, where they are desperately needed. The Gaza government media office stated on August 24th that the shelter deficit exceeds 96%, leading it to determine that the southern governorates of the Gaza Strip are unable to accommodate 1.3 million forcibly displaced people as Israel exacerbates the humanitarian catastrophe. At the same time, the media office added, quote, there are no safe spaces for displacement in the southern Gaza Strip, as the Israeli occupation army imposes military control over approximately 77% of the Strip's area, making any new displacement nearly impossible and threatening the lives of the displaced. Meanwhile, children and adults are continuing to die of starvation. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, or IPC, the international body that monitors malnutrition and starvation, formally determined that Stage 5 famine, the final and most catastrophic stage, is currently unfolding in Gaza. Quote, as this famine is entirely man-made, it can be halted and reversed, the IPC stated. The time for debate and hesitation has passed. Starvation is present and is rapidly spreading. There should be no doubt in anyone's mind that an immediate at-scale response is needed. Any further delay, even by days, will result in a totally unacceptable escalation of famine-related mortality. According to the Famine Review Committee, all three criteria for declaring famine have been met. At least 20% of households face extreme lack of food, at least 30% of children suffer from acute malnutrition, and at least 2 out of every 10,000 people die daily from starvation. The Palestinian group Al-Mizan Center for Human Rights stated that, quote, the current state of starvation and famine was driven by the consistent destruction of food sources, including farmland, agricultural production sites, and the fishing industry, as well as water sources and infrastructure. While this declaration by the IPC is significant and welcomed, Al-Mizan stresses that it must be followed by concrete action from the international community to end famine, starvation, and every other genocidal act that is being carried out by Israel against the Palestinian people in Gaza. Famine has long been rampant in Gaza, and today's declaration only confirms what Al-Mizan has long warned of. Save the Children International's CEO Inger Ashing spoke at the United Nations Security Council this week, saying that clinics in Gaza, quote, are overwhelmed by need, every bench packed with malnourished children and their mothers. Yet our clinics are almost silent now. Children do not have the strength to speak or even cry out in agony. They lie there emaciated, quite literally wasting away, their tiny bodies overcome by hunger and disease, the medical and specialized nutrition supplies they need all but used up, she said. A few kilometers away stand ready a sea of supplies, thousands upon thousands of truckloads of life-saving items, all blocked, she said. These past few weeks, more and more children have shared that they wish to be dead. One child wrote, I wish I were in heaven where my mother is. In heaven there is love, there is food and water. According to official records from the Palestinian Ministry of Health in Gaza, as of August 27th, 313 deaths by starvation, including 119 children, have now been documented since October 2023. This includes 248 deaths since July 1st, 2025, of whom 58 were children and 10 people who died on August 27th alone. Turning to the occupied West Bank, Israeli forces launched 2 massive incursions into Nablus and Ramallah this week as settlers continue to destroy and seize Palestinian agricultural land. On Wednesday, August 27th, nearly 80 Palestinians were injured by live ammunition and tear gas during an Israeli raid into the old city of Nablus. Wafa news agency said the invasion lasted for nearly 14 hours, resulting in 2 detentions and forcing several families to leave their homes, which were then converted into military observation posts. A child was blindfolded and abducted by Israeli soldiers during the invasion. According to local and security sources, dozens of military vehicles raided the city and deployed their troops in its center, placing the old city under siege and conducting a wide-scale invasion campaign. Nearby in Sebastia, also in the northern West Bank, Israeli forces swarmed the village on Tuesday, raiding Palestinian homes and destroying their contents. Israeli soldiers also assaulted residents, ransacked shops, and stole money and goods from them. Sebastia's mayor, Mohammed Azam, told the New Arab that the invasion operation began at the ancient town's archaeological site, where troops expelled shopkeepers and closed tourism kiosks before expanding into the old city. Snipers were deployed on rooftops, dozens of homes were raided, and residents were interrogated in the streets. In the last 5 months, Azam said, Israel has been engaged in intense excavations and digging, and antiquities have been stolen. In May, Israel's parliament approved a multi-million-dollar proposal to turn Sebastia into a Zionist tourist destination, using pseudo-archaeological pretexts and biblical mythology in an attempt to seize the land, with plans to place the site under its so-called Antiquities Authority and build a military watchtower there. Israeli forces launched a raid on Ramallah and nearby Al-Bireh on Tuesday, wounding nearly 60 Palestinians, including a child who was shot in the abdomen. Al Jazeera reported that Israeli snipers positioned themselves on rooftops and soldiers stormed the central vegetable market area, while others fired stun grenades into busy shops. That was in Ramallah earlier this week. Israeli soldiers also raided a currency exchange shop in downtown Ramallah, stealing 1.5 million shekels, or about $450,000, claiming the cash was being used to fund Hamas. Near Ramallah, Israeli forces uprooted approximately 3,000 olive trees in the village of Al-Mughayr this week. The army said that the trees posed a security threat to a main road to an Israeli settlement colony that runs through the village's lands. The deputy head of the village council, Marzouk Abu Naim, told the Wafa news agency that Israeli soldiers had stormed more than 30 homes since dawn on August 23rd, destroying residents' property and vehicles. Israeli settlers also attacked olive tree groves. Palestinian farmers in the Ramallah area, including in Al-Mughayr village, replanted trees that had been uprooted and destroyed by Israeli soldiers and settlers. Wafa news agency reported that hundreds of residents were forced to spend the night in neighboring villages due to the brutal assault on the village and the Israeli-imposed ban on entering or leaving. Last week, Israeli forces closed the 2 main entrances to the village, preventing entry or exit, including ambulances, while forcing shop owners to shut down and restricting the movement of residents inside the village. Settlers also threatened residents by calling their mobile phones, vowing to kill them and destroy their property. Last year, extremist Israeli minister Itamar Ben-Gvir set up his tent at the eastern entrance to Al-Mughayr, inciting against the village and demanding the displacement of its residents and the demolition and bulldozing of all houses and lands, Wafa added. We've published many features on the Electronic Intifada in the last week, but we wanted to highlight Journalists Denounce Israel's Attempts to Silence the Truth by Ehud Nassar, writing from Gaza City. Ehud writes about Israel's targeted assassinations in a suicide drone strike of a group of journalists inside the Al Jazeera tent next to Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City on August 10th. The attack came after the Israeli military made repeated threats against Al Jazeera correspondents Anas al-Sharif and Mohammed 𝐄𝐥𝐿, who were killed alongside two colleagues, Ibrahim Zaher and Mohammed Nufal, both camera operators. 3 other people who were present were also killed: freelance journalists Mohammed al-Khaldi, Moamen Aliawa, and Saad Jundia, a civilian who happened to be present. Ehud talked to 2 other journalists, Wadi Abu al-Sud, a reporter with Yemen TV, and Saeed Hasballah, a freelance cameraman with Al Jazeera, who witnessed the attack. She writes, quote, both al-Sud and Hasballah said that they were in shock after witnessing their friends die in front of them, powerless to save them. It was only 3 hours later I realized I had shrapnel in my back, al-Sud said. Seeing Anas and Mohammed like that, my nerves collapsed. I didn't even notice my own wounds. Anas and Mohammed were not just colleagues, they were my brothers. My wife has been suffering from a serious illness with no medicine available in Gaza for a week, and both of them had been helping me search for medicine. Hasballah spoke of his bond with Mohammed 𝐄𝐥𝐿. Since the second Israeli invasion of Al-Shifa Hospital in April of last year, they endured siege together. Al-Sud had stood by Mohammed and supported him when Mohammed's mother was killed during the invasion of Al-Shifa. She had gone missing and was found in the street where Mohammed had to eventually identify his mother's corpse by the way she slept, her nails, and her hair. Still, there is no action from international bodies, and still Israel kills journalists. Nonetheless, journalists in Gaza remain undeterred. Baida Moamer, a TV presenter with Palestine TV, told the Electronic Intifada, "The language of humanity is our shared language, and we have sworn to deliver the message, even if only one journalist remains alive." Those are excerpts from Journalists Denounce Israel's Attempts to Silence the Truth by Ehud Nassar, a student in education studies writing from Gaza on electronicintifada.net. And finally, as we always do, we wanted to highlight people expressing joy, determination, and resilience across Palestine. Journalist Mohammed al-Sha'ir filmed a group of kids playing on the beach, jumping into the waves and cheering each other on, he says, just a few meters away from the Israeli army's position on the shores of Rafah. Quote, in the place closest to danger, they carve out a space of peace, and in the face of death, they carry nothing but hearts beating with life and innocence. That's it for the news roundup. As always, go to electronicintifada.net for much more, especially to read our new features by our brave writers in Gaza. And see you on Thursday, September 4th, on our regular live stream broadcast.